All right, Boone, hit me. What is the first question for this week?
Okay, so this one isn't necessarily about a specific game or any sort of preview kind of material. This one is more about fantasy and what can managers do to help their season. So, what can managers who have losing records right now do to kind of salvage things, to turn things around? And we're digging like fairly deep on some of these. Like, these are some moves that I personally have done.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them may be a little shadier than others, Harmon, but we're going to talk about that as we go.
Oh,
But yeah, if you're, 4-0, 3-1 right now, you're feeling great. You're on top of the world. But let me remind you, things can change quickly. So you got to stay on top of everything. If you're 1-3, if you're 0-4, you feel like the bottom is just falling out. Your season's over. You're not going to make the fantasy playoffs. I'm here to tell you that's not the case. I have done it plenty of times where I've started off with a ton of injuries or I've started off with guys underperforming. And you know what? 0-4, 0-5 one time and still won the title. I feel really good about that one. Always bring that up. So it can turn around. It can definitely turn around, but you might have to be a little more proactive about it. So I got some suggestions here. I don't know if you have any you could throw out, but we'll talk about these as we go. Some things that people could be doing to try to get some immediate results and get things back on the right track and hopefully get back to 500 very quickly. So the first one here, trade for players who have good schedules over the next few weeks or over the next month or so. And that might seem obvious, but you're just trying to get every advantage that you can in your lineup, right? And it's very unfortunate right now that when I was looking ahead at some of the schedules, the Bears and the Packers have just incredible schedules, but they're on bye this week. So if you're 0-4 right now, you don't want to trade for the Bears or the Packers because they're not going to help you in this game. If you get the win this week, then you could think about those teams. Look at some other guys like Breece Hall right now. Brought him up as a buy low multiple times, but he gets the Cowboys, he gets the Panthers and the Bengals. Those are 3 of his next 4 games. Very good matchups for him. Alvin Kamara, Chris Olave, I think they're interesting buy lows. We've mentioned them before. They get the Giants, the Patriots, and the Bears the next 3 weeks. And then if you go wait one more week, like I said, then I think you definitely want to invest in the Bears and the Packers because they just have the best possible matchups from weeks like 6 to week 9 or 10, depending which one you're looking at there. But take a look around. See if there's any players out there who you like, who have some easier schedules coming up, and then look at your own roster and see the players that might have tougher games over the next couple of weeks that might make it difficult for you to get some wins and swap those out. And I mentioned this, you might have to take a little bit of a haircut on that trade. And that's okay because if you're 0-4, you got to get moving. You got to do something that's going to get you some wins. And that's the first thing that I think you can go out and look at your roster and do pretty quickly.
That's a really good piece of advice there that, this trade might not look good on paper, might look like a little bit of a ripoff, like you tweeted out or whatever, and with the screenshot and people are going to make fun of you. Who cares, man? You got to win, okay? Like you got to get wins right now because otherwise your season is going to be over very, very quickly. I did like the not piece of advice, but the note about the Bears and the Packers schedule though, because that is also something too, that if you are a good team and the team somehow that stinks in your league has Roma Dunze or whatever, and they need a win this week, if you can give them like a valuable piece that they can start now and potentially try to get Roma Dunze, and you might have to do the 2-for-1, totally think that makes a lot of sense, right? So I really think that's something that you can do because maybe you don't need him this week, or you could afford to drop a game. Not that you ever want to lose a game, but still, I think that makes a little bit of sense. I would also say just from a dynasty angle right now, I know we're thinking about redraft and stuff like that, but from a dynasty trade angle, this is right about that time where you need to start figuring out like where your team stands. I don't want you to ever go into tank mode necessarily, but week 5, week 6, start getting realistic about what type of team you are. Are you a team that you think you're close, or you think you're kind of teetering towards the edge? I'll bring up a team of mine that I specifically have where I feel like I'd been kind of teetering on the edge of like, is this team, do I need to like push a few pieces in and make a run, or are we close to the end here? And I feel like I got a message from the universe this week because the number 1 running back is Chuba Hubbard, which obviously isn't a great situation to begin with, but that's the number 1 running back on the team. Number 2 running back, I was all excited, like, all right, now we can play Trey Benson. Well, now we can't play Trey Benson, so I feel like I'm getting signs from the universe that I need to start being realistic with what type of team I have here.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And you also want to see, like in Dynasty especially, I always look ahead to see what my opponents look like the next couple of weeks because
Mm.
I have a team, for example, where I'm doing all right, but I lost Joe Burrow. I do not have another quarterback to put into that spot. I have Dak Prescott, and then I don't have another super flex option there from a QB standpoint. So I looked ahead and I was like, hey, my matchups for the next couple of weeks are pretty easy. I can get by without having to go make a big trade and try to overspend to get a quarterback. Let's wait this out over a couple of weeks, see how it goes, and then make that decision. So you always have to approach this stuff on a case by case basis. And I think you make a very good point here where a lot of the things we're saying for managers to do if they're struggling and trying to turn it around, the exact opposite applies to the teams with the winning records, right? So keep that in mind as we're going through these because I think they can kind of help everybody out there. Now, this next one, it should be obvious, if you need wins now, you can't have players sitting on your bench who are injured. You just mentioned Trey Benson. That's a perfect example of a guy where if you have Trey Benson, can you wait that 4 weeks while he's on IR before he comes back? Probably not if you have a losing record. So trade him. Everyone's saying he's going to come back later in the season. This isn't a James Conner situation where he's going to be out for the year. So you trade him away. Again, you might have to take a loss on that trade because he's injured and not going to play for at least a month. But you make that trade to get him off your roster and get a piece that can help you right now. And you might have to package him with something else. Like all of that has to be taken into account here. And when we say like you're selling at a bit of a discount, we're not talking about selling an RB1 or a wide receiver 1 for like an RB3, a wide receiver 3. You're taking a discount. Maybe you have to go down to like a wide receiver 2, RB2 situation. You're not taking a massive, massive discount on these. So also keep that in mind. I put out my rest of season rankings, my trade value charts every single week. You can go check those out. They're a guide. Every league is different, but you can use those to make some, offers, kind of put it together, see if you can get in the right ballpark on some of these deals. I'm factoring in all these injuries. So keep that in mind. Go take a look at those as well. And I think that's a very important one when you get these injured players that you were waiting on, when you get guys who potentially are suspended. And Rashee Rice is a big one right now, where if you're holding him and you have a losing record, you got to make a decision very quickly. Can you wait until week 7 before he comes back? Probably not. So if you have a losing record right now, you got to move him in order to get wins. And on the flip side, if you're a team in a comfortable position, you absolutely, like the number one priority right now should be going out and trying to get Rashee Rice on your roster, because I think when he comes back, he's going to be a top 15 fantasy receiver. And potentially, depending on the manager who has him right now, you could get him at quite the discount and he could come along and just be a huge piece for you in the second half of the season.
Yeah, it's always easier to say wait those 6 games in the offseason than it is once we actually get to the real games. So it will be interesting to see, for the people out there, who is the manager in your league that has Rashee Rice? Because if they're 2-3 by the end of the weekend, they probably still think they've got a shot. But if they're one of these 1-4 or God forbid 0-5 teams because they took them with a priority pick and they're just sitting on something and they have been able to cobble something together, they might be a little bit more willing to give you something that will help you right away. So we threw up a poll from our YouTube chat, by the way. If you're watching along with us right now, we appreciate you. We would also appreciate if you would subscribe to the channel as well if you don't for whatever reason. We asked the folks in the chat, are you feeling good about your fantasy teams right now? 41% say yes, it's going great. Only 26% say no, everyone hurts. Everyone is hurt. 20% is nothing matters, and then 13% is no, I just stink at this. Boone, I'm going to say shout out to us and shout out to our listeners and viewers. 41% say it's going great. That's some good data right there.
Yeah, I thought, based on all the injuries, I thought that one was definitely going to take it here. But no, that's good to see that's the one. So we're helping still a big amount of people here, but not the majority apparently, which is a good thing, like you said. The next one is the one that I mentioned that gets a little bit shady depending how far you want to take it here, Harmon. So you tell me, is this too far? Is this too much doing this? But I will say I have done this before. So the easy part of this is trade away guys that have upcoming buys, because you can't have those zeros in your lineup. You can't wait it out. So you trade away guys with upcoming buys. You trade them for guys that have buys later in the season. That's simple. That's obvious. And then if you want to take it one step further, you could wait until later in the season and then trade those guys before their buys come for guys who have already had their buy. So essentially, you're just working through it. You're avoiding these players having any buys. You're not taking zeros for those weeks. You're trading them before their bye week right now for a later bye. And then before their bye comes in week 11, week 12, whenever, you trade them for someone that had a bye in week 5 or week 6, right? Very simple, very straightforward. Now, the step further and the place where it gets a little shady, have you ever looked ahead at your opponents that you potentially might be trading with, looked at the week that you were playing against them, Harmon, and said, hey, I have this guy on bye in week 10, and I'm playing that manager in week 10. What if I trade him to that manager? Now, that manager often will not look at bye weeks. They're just going to be excited to get that player in a trade. But if you need those wins, when that matchup comes up, you have now put them at a disadvantage. They're going to be shorthanded without that player that week. It's next level. It takes a lot of effort. That's why I only recommend doing this if you are a losing team at the moment, because you got to kind of go a little further with that one. It doesn't always work out either. You might not find the right trade partner and the right bye week and all that sort of stuff. But that is a next level extra step move that you could do to give yourself that much more of an edge to try to get another win.
What I'm learning from this is that either, well, the answer is probably both, but either you are just way more diabolical than I am, or you're just a way better fantasy football player than I am, which the answer is probably both to that. I mean, you did beat me last week, so per the stats, you're better than me. But we'll leave that there. I think that's just like a level I've never even thought of, dude. I've never even thought of doing something like that. So, and I do say this all the time. I will admit this to the people that listen to the show, that watch the show. I am just not good at fantasy trades. I don't think I'm a very good analyst when it comes to fantasy trades. And I don't think I'm all that great about it on my own, mostly because of what you just said there. Like the thing, and this is so stupid. I admit this is stupid. I'm like, dude, Boone, where is your loyalty? The guys that you drafted, you just have no loyalty to these players. You're treating them like, oh, come in the door, come out the door. When I need you, you're here. When I don't, you're gone. I mean, where is your loyalty, man? That was my thought there, which again, I recognize is stupid because this is all make believe.
I think that's one of the biggest mistakes that people make in fantasy. They'll draft a team. They become married to those players. They think they were totally right. After they draft a team, they spend a week or two looking at that roster and just falling in love with all those guys. And then whenever anybody doesn't, perform like they expected, or if there's an injury that's slowing a guy down, they just want to hang in there. They want to hold out. No, you can't do that, especially when you have a losing record. You got to make a quick decision. And fantasy, when it comes to fantasy players, I'm not looking at loyalty. I'm a loyal person in real life. When it comes to fantasy, I carry no loyalty to these players. Maybe some of the Bills guys. Maybe I would hold on to them a little longer than I should. But other than that, I carry no loyalty. I am making moves to try to win. I want to get those bragging rights over my coworkers, over my friends, over whoever I am playing against in fantasy. That's just the competitive nature in me, Harmon. It drives me from inside, and it makes me want to win. And I'm doing everything I can to try to make that happen.
Oh, I mean, hey, everybody's different, man. I'm a loyal guy, and you've got a wandering eye. I get it. No, that's fine. No, that is real. That is really smart. It is smart to have that approach to it. And like I said, this is something I struggle with. I'm trying to get better about it, and just being more open to trades, being less attached to certain things, whether that's my opinions, my the players that I draft, things of that nature. So I do think that is really good advice, and all of that can be helpful for teams that are kind of trying to make that transition here right around week 5 to prepare for the rest of their season.